Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we get the right guests, we ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. It's an interactive show, and we want you to send in your views on WhatsApp based on the number on the screen. If you're watching on any of the social media platforms, feel free to send us your comments. We'll be happy to read them. So it's 19 days to election 2020, but there are big stories. So on Monday, we brought you part 1 of the Amidu saga. Today, we enter part 2 because we'll be looking at his letter of resignation in greater detail. We also have a 9-page response from the president signed by his secretary. We'll bring you that as well. And we'll be talking to 3 very interesting people. A private medical practitioner who's one of the few men we know was the boss of Amidu. We also have the board chairman of the Office of the Special Prosecutor joining us, and then Justice Remsai, who's a legal practitioner and a law professor, joining us as well. Stay tuned.
Delivered 2 healthy kids last night.
Huh? Congrats. Have you heard?
2 kids.
You get free calls from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. for 6 months when you make an Airtel Tigo money transaction on new Airtel Tigo Saves.
My son has 2 kids. Agwazi. Mami, no. Now your sister almost sent me.
For all your lengthy conversations, get a SIM today.
Yeah, so I'm still talking.
Since 2017, a new dawn is breaking in Ghana. The NPP is building the foundations for growth and transformation. We are curbing unemployment with new and decent jobs.
Thanks to Nana, I've got a new job through NAPCO. That is why I'm voting for him as the MPP.
The promise of free SHS is now a reality.
Through education, I have a brighter future. That's why I'm voting for Nana and the NPP.
The future of our country is in the hands of a competent leader, a man you can trust.
I trust Nana.
This December, let's protect our progress. Let's give Nana 4 more to do more for you.
2020, 4 more for Nana. 2020,
yes, Nana. Hello, my people. The Electoral Commission announces that the presidential and parliamentary elections come off on Monday, 7th December 2020.
From 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.
The mandate of the Electoral Commission is to organize free, fair, and safe elections. So you need to note these things before going to your polling stations to vote. Your passport to vote is your voter's ID card. Never leave home without it. Go to your designated polling station with your voter's ID card. Remember, no nose mask, no entry. You will wash your hands under running water. Then, sanitize your hands before joining the queue, if any. You will observe the mandatory social distance in the queue. The officer at the first table will check to confirm that your name is in the voters register, then pass you on to the second table. The second officer will validate your name using the biometric verification device, then pass you on to the third table. The third officer will give you the ballot for the presidential elections. You will go to the voting screen. Press your thumb on the thumbprint pad and thumbprint against the picture of your selected candidate. Remember, you will choose just one candidate. Fold the ballot paper, first vertically, then horizontally, then drop it into the ballot box marked Presidential. The third officer will give you the ballot for the parliamentary elections. You will go to the voting screen and thumbprint against the picture of your selected candidate. You will also choose just one candidate. Fold the ballot paper, first vertically, then horizontally, then drop it into the ballot box marked Parliamentary. Your little finger on the left hand will be dipped in the electoral stain to show you have voted. Your hands will be sanitized again. You will leave the polling station after voting. You can come back after 5 to observe the counting of the votes. Please note that you will not conduct yourself in a disorderly manner or cause trouble at the polling station. You will be arrested and prosecuted.
Please remember, at all times, to observe all COVID-19 safety protocols at the polling station.
Let's do our part and help the Electoral Commission conduct a clean, credible, free, and fair election. The Electoral Commission, keeping democracy safe and sound.
Welcome back to The Point of View. So it's been a tumultuous past 3 days in the fight against corruption. At exactly 15:15 on Monday, the 16th of November, Special Prosecutor Martin Amidu resigned. He issued a statement to the press and sent a 4-page letter to the president. The day after that, the president responded to the letter of Mr. Amidu. He initially thanked him and received his resignation, but then wrote a response to some of the allegations contained in Mr. Amidu's resignation letter. I'm going to share details of both letters to you this evening, but I have a very interesting panel I'll be talking to. First on the Zoom, I have my good friend Justice Remsai. Justice, great to have you. Thanks for joining us on The Point of View. Good evening.
Good evening, Bernard, and thanks for having me.
Fantastic. We'll be joined shortly by Linda Oforikwafu. She's with the Ghana Integrity Initiative, but she's also the board chair of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. She'll join us on the phone. And then later on, we'll be talking to John Akbaribo Indebugre, former member of parliament, private legal practitioner, who many years ago under the PNDC was Martin Amidu's boss. He predicted that this was going to happen. We'll find out whether it was a prophetic prediction or whether there was some basis to that. So all that coming up. Let me take you first through Mr. Amidu's letter. So there are two letters. The first one is a quick letter to the public. I think that's clear for everybody to see. He said he had resigned. The main reason was that the reaction he received for doing the Japan report did not encourage him to continue in the work because he felt he was not being allowed to do an independent job. There's a very serious conclusion in that letter where he says the events of November 12 removed the only protection he had. A lot of people believe he was referring to Chairman Rawlings. We'll talk about that later. But let me give you some quick highlights of the letter he wrote to the president. I think there are three main issues here. The first one is the issue about the president's misconception about him, Mr. Amidu, being a poodle. That is in paragraph 3. And this is what he says. It says, the one condition upon which I accepted to be nominated as special prosecutor when you invited me to your office on 10 January 2018 was your firm promise to me that you will respect and ensure same by your government for my independence and freedom of action as special prosecutor. Several things have happened since then, but your reaction to my letter with reference number very long on 16 October, which was delivered to you on 19 October, conveying to you the conclusion and observations of the analysis of the risk of corruption and anti-corruption of a Japan Royalties Limited. This is the key part. Your reaction to this letter convinces me beyond every reasonable doubt that you labored under the mistaken belief that I could hold the office of the special prosecutor as your poodle. Very strong words. Essentially, Mr. Amidu is saying, Mr. President, you don't know who you are dealing with. You thought I could be pushed around by you. Then there's a 4-paragraph blitz detailing dates and letters, essentially saying that, narrating the series of events that took place after Mr. Amidu had presented his letter to the president or presented his report or the summary of the report. So, for example, paragraph 1 of page 2, I met Your Excellency in your office in the afternoon of 23 October, and I underscored the fact that my letter dated 16 October to you was sent out of necessary courtesy of prior information to your office as President of the Republic and Commander-in-Chief. I also underscored the fact that the analysis was conducted professionally. It could not be reviewed by the Minister of Finance or yourself. And my letter was not intended for you to direct me as to how to conduct my duties of office. This is very important. And he really harps on this throughout the letter. He saw the president's attempt to convey finance minister's view to him as an interference. Then he says, I reluctantly agreed to your terms. And what are the terms? Your Excellency insisted that I should withhold any further action on the report for 1 week. He says, I reluctantly agreed, but you gave notice immediately that I did not intend to continue as special prosecutor because of interference in the performance of my function. So he communicates to the president that I will want to resign because of this. Now, he then goes on to talk about other things. But the other key point was when he says the president was acting as a judge in his own cause. This is paragraph 4 of page 2. And this is very serious. And I'm reading all this because I'm going to read for you the president's response as well. Now, Your Excellency was acting as a judge in your own cause in usurping my function to take any independent follow-up action as the anti-corruption assessment report when you knew from my 13-page letter conveying to you my conclusions of this report and assessment that I had pointed out specific things about your office. I'm paraphrasing now. He's talking about the amendment of the Minerals Income Investment Act, executive approval of the procedures, and some backdating issues, very serious issues. Then the last thing he talks about is in the first paragraph of page 3. So first he says the president had a wrong impression. Then he said the president tried to interfere with his work. Then he says, since he took the oath of office, or since he was vetted by parliament, he had told the world that he would build an innovatively operationalized, effective and efficient office. And the rest of the letter talks about how he has not been given support to do that. He says he operates from a 3-bedroom boys' quarters. And then he also speaks about the lack of money being paid, emoluments to him and his deputy. He says he hasn't had the right requisite staff. So these are the 3, I can say maybe 4 issues. President had a wrong impression about who I was. He tried to interfere and therefore impinge on my independence. Then he says the president was trying to be a judge in his own cause. And then he concludes by saying, we've not even been given any salaries. That's what you have it. Seconded staff, some of the challenges with working as OSP. So it's a 4-page letter signed on 16th November. So those are the 4 main issues. Well, Nana Asante Bediatu is the secretary to the president. And his response, I have it here, is 9 pages. 9-page response. I can't read all the 9 pages. So what I've done is I've selected his responses as it pertains to these 4 issues. And I'm just going to read quick portions to you. Now, he starts by saying that neither the president nor any member of government intended or sought to interfere with his work. And that it is surprising that Mr. Amidu will make what he describes as the untenable claim that his resignation was a result of the president's alleged interference. Then in bullet point 3, at page 1 of your letter, you claim that you had been convinced beyond reasonable doubt that His Excellency the President had a mistaken belief that you would hold office as his poodle. In substantiation of this allegation, you allude to a request by the President Chief of Staff pursuant to a directive by the President for you to meet the President in the morning of 21st October. There's a bit of discrepancy here. Amidu says the meeting is 23rd. Bediatu Asante says it's 21st October, but that's neither here nor there. Now he says, you also describe the report as being in the nature of a compliance audit. It is instructive that the 13-page document you delivered to the President was in fact not the actual report, but a summary. Now, point number 4, your accusation of interference with your functions simply on account of a meeting the President held with you is perplexing. This is President's response. He's perplexed. It's like, how can you make this conclusion? In exercise of what you consider to be your powers under Act 959, you voluntarily proceeded to produce the JAPA report. The President had no hand in your work. Without prompting from any quarter within the executive, you delivered a letter purporting to be a copy of your report to the President. The purpose of presenting a copy of the report to the President is decipherable from paragraph 32 of your letter to the President, in which you indicate that you hope, quote, the report will improve current and future legislation and executive actions to make corruption and corruption-related offenses high risk. He uses the word baffling again, paragraph 5. It is baffling that you will present a summary report of your work, not commissioned by the President or a member of the executive to him, and expect him not to act on the report. So let's get this. Mr. Amidu says, when I sent you the report, I was hoping that because you are President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, you would know. This was for need to know. It wasn't for you to do anything. President says, I didn't send you to do the work. Nobody in government asked you to do the work. You sent it to me. And as a president, once you send something to me, I have to act on it. So this is the first point of departure. Okay. Now, the other part of the letter Mr. Amidu wrote was that you were trying to be a judge in your own cause. Even though Mr. Amidu writes that early in the letter, President responds to that in his last paragraph. And I think he's very pained by that because he left it for the last paragraph, paragraph 40. Let me just give you the President's response to that. It says, finally, you accuse the President of being judged in his own cause. This is the unkindest cut of all. You did not and have not alleged that the president is or could be the subject of adverse findings or investigations arising from your assessment report of the Ejapa transaction. It beggars belief, therefore, that you would insinuate that the president has himself something to hide and seeks to be a judge in his own cause. It's important to point out that Mr. Amidu gave 2 reasons for this, but the letter from the president didn't respond to those specifics. Mr. Amidu says, because in my assessment in page 33 and page 52, I had pointed out certain actions by your office which I thought I could further investigate. So in a sense, in trying to intervene in this matter, you are being a judge in your own cause. Nana Asante's response is that, as a lawyer of many years standing, there's no doubt that you know that if one is not party to or has an interest in a matter, one cannot be described as a judge in his own cause. Now, there's a long response to the claims about poor office space, lack of resourcing. That's a lot. But what the letter does is to chronicle a series of things. For example, this is page 5. Indeed, the records show that in keeping with resolve to sufficiently equip the office in the discharge of its mandate under Act 959, the President provided your office with the necessary financial and administrative support. Your office received more than a sufficient budgetary allocation to assist in its anti-corruption fight. Remarkably, your letter of resignation alludes to the consistent deprivation of finances and financial handicap imposed on the OSP. You also bemoaned the non-payment of the salaries of yourself and the Deputy Special Prosecutor in a manner that suggests government's failure to do so. Yet your office had been adequately funded to pay salaries. The impression given by you that there was a deliberate intention to ensure your office didn't function is more startling. So this is saying, I'm surprised at what you're doing. Then he begins from paragraph 16 to chronicle specifics. For example, in 2018, an amount of 1 million cedis was released to your office to enable it to undertake set-up activities. In June 2018, your office requested and you were granted commencement capex of 2.7 million. It goes on and on and on and on. First, there was a building identified, GNTC building. Then there was another building identified somewhere else, which is the Get Fund building. And there were so many things pointed out. I don't want to bore you with all those, but the key points here is that Mr. Amidu says, I didn't get the support I needed to run an efficient and effective organization. The office I have is too small, I don't have enough people to work with. Presidency says, we sent money into the account of the OSP, you didn't draw down. It was your inability to utilize the money. It wasn't that we didn't give you money. Although the president acknowledges and has directed the chief of staff for Mr. Amidu to be paid and his deputy as well. Now, I don't want to go into too much. Let me start with Justice, then I'll come to Linda. Justice, what do you make of this, I don't know, 15 pages, 9 from the president, 5 from Mr. Amidu? What is your reading of what is going on here?
Yeah, Bernard.
Yes.
I think the 2 letters seem to converge on one point. While Mr. Amidu accuses the president of interference, the president's letter, broadly speaking, attempts to refute the allegation by providing what it considers as evidence of non-interference and also of promotion of the work of the special prosecutor. Now, having looked at this argument, you would know clearly that the 2 parties had some point of misunderstanding, and I think you alluded to that in your analysis. To clear this misunderstanding, we need to look at what Mr. Amidu actually did. I think the OSP did what he called an assessment, a risk assessment of the deal, that is the Ejapa deal. And in his letter, he indicated clearly that after the assessment, he may or may not, commence a full criminal investigation. Now, if you are able to...
Go ahead, please.
If you are able to understand this, notice that then it will be clear to you that the president, had a different view of what Mr. Amidu did, and then tried to find a way of explaining that.
So you're saying that the two of them, you are saying that there was a misunderstanding between Mr. Amidu and the president as to what was actually going on. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. Now you can see that from, for example, Mr. Amidu alleges that the president was not supposed to take any action in respect of his letter to him. And then the president also says that, well, when you gave me this letter, I understood you to be saying that I need to take some particular action. And the president specifically referred to a paragraph of the letter which says that the president should do some things about future fight of corruption. Now, my worry here is that we all know, and the president is also aware, that the office of the special prosecutor is an independent office. And being an independent office, I was actually surprised that the president interpreted a letter given to him as a license for him to take some steps in respect of Mr. Amidu's work. And that is what actually got Mr. Amidu to be suspicious. And if you read the president's letter, you realize that the president's basis was trying to justify the steps he took. So he cited, for example, the issue of all the Otteran party, that is giving a fair hearing to the persons that the special prosecutor had investigated. My understanding of the principle of all the Otteran party, my legal understanding of this is that you do not take away someone's right without giving the person a fair hearing. I do not understand Mr. Amidu's assessment as an attempt to take away the right of anyone. So, to my mind and my understanding of what the legal position is, the principle of all the Otteran party, that is giving a fair hearing, does not arise at this point, especially when Mr. Amidu made it clear that this is just an assessment and that he may take full criminal investigation later. So I find that particular defense quite worrying. But then if you look at the issue of independence, it will appear to you that most of there is some element of a breach of that independence of the special prosecutor. And the evidence for that breach actually comes from the president's own letter, the 9-page letter. So, for example, if you look at the letter, you realize that the president actually accepted a response from the Minister of Finance and was willing to pass that response to the special prosecutor. And I'm wondering what actually, empowered the president to believe that he is supposed to take a response from the finance minister and hand it over to the special prosecutor. Now, secondly, if you look at the president's explanation of the support they gave to the special prosecutor, you will notice from the start that there seemed to be an overwhelming involvement of the chief of staff in the work of in the establishment of the special prosecutor's office, and that is worrisome because the office of the chief of staff is directly under the president's office, and so any work by the chief of staff is actually the work of the president. When the special prosecutor's office was set up, one of the key issues that came up was his independence. So I got worried when I read the president's response over and over again, and you see the chief of staff actually present in everything that was done. It is as if there was this understanding at the presidency that they have a direct responsibility for not the setting up of the office, but also its day-to-day running. For example, they were paying light bills, they were paying water bills, and sanitary, a collection of refuse was being paid from the president's office. That tells you that even though without expressly saying it, there was this psychological, position that we need to either help this office up and we need to do everything that it deserves to.
All right, Justice,
at the end of the day, that creates a different impression of actually trying to run that office from the president's office. So really, I see that the independent issue is actually a very strong point, which came out clearly. And to be honest with you, the president's response actually provided more evidence in support of allegation of interference than it sought to do, which was to refute the allegation.
I'll come back to you, Justice. Thank you for your initial thoughts. Linda Ofori-Kwafo is the board chair of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, and she's also the executive director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Just to pick her thoughts on what's going on. So, Linda, thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, Donald. Good evening to your viewers.
So what do you make of the current situation, the resignation of the head of the institution of which you are board chair?
Okay, so well, for me, it's a surprise. I must say, from where I sit, I am quite disappointed. I'm disappointed not just because I am the board chair, but also looking at the commitment, the energy that civil society organizations, including in this put in developing the act that really set up the Office of the Prosecutor. So I'm making reference to the Act 959, and where we are now, I am just disappointed in the development, but then also, not only alone, I think many Ghanaians are disappointed, and both especially veterans and intelligence that are on the issue. So we would be missing that.
Now, were you and the board aware of what was going on? This has been like a 2-year saga from the appointment February 2018 to date, and looking at all that has happened. Is this something the board was aware of in terms of, for example, the challenges the office was facing in getting accommodation, the fact that they are not being paid for 2 years? Did you know any of these things, or are these things a surprise to you?
Okay, so Bernard, if you are really taking a good look at the OSP Act, you realize that it's well formulated, well structured, and I think it's one of the good laws that we have in the country. That is one challenge, so it's not the perfect legislation that we fight with. If you make reference to Section 3 of the Act, and actually if you just want to look at even the first Section 3.1, you get to know what the functions of the office is, and go further, the Section 6, you look at the functions of the board. And so the board, Section 6 talks about the board having the responsibility to ensure the formulation of policies that are necessary for the achievement of the office of the office. And the B part is where I want us to concentrate a bit on, to ensure the proper and effective performance of the functions of the office. Obviously, some of the issues that have come up in the letter submitted by the OSP, the responses from the president actually fall within the responsibilities of the board. We talk about the accommodation, we talk about the recruitment of senior personnel, we talk about salaries and all those things. Some of these discussions actually came to the board. But then, I earlier on had mentioned that this is a very good legislation because it seeks to ensure the security of the office, the special prosecutor, the independence of the special prosecutor. And so in the performance of our responsibility as a board, we strive to a very large extent to not interfere. So we would advise where the advice is needed, we will support where the need arises, we will talk about these issues and discuss the approaches in as much as we always try to give the OSP take the lead.
So let me understand you right. You're saying that the board is not the one at the forefront of trying to secure accommodation or any of these things, but you will be aware that the office is going through these challenges, but it's not in your place to solve them. Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the board has a responsibility to ensure the proper and effective performance of the functions of the office.
Okay.
During a new office, getting accommodation is key.
Okay.
When the senior personnel, with the act says that we are supposed to advise on the treatment of senior personnel, is also important. So everything that is necessary for the effective functioning of the office will obviously come to the attention of the board. So some of these matters came to the attention of the board for its deliberations. But then what I'm saying is when it came to resolution we would advise, because if you look at the Architectural Assembly, says we would advise in the recruitment of senior persons. So we would advise. What are we looking at doing about accommodation? We get a briefing, we try to follow up, and I think we always try to give the OSP the lead in interaction with the key stakeholders and ensuring that the resolution.
I see. So just to get a sense, so for example,
that I believe they adopted not so that we don't interfere in the office and in the functioning of the.
I get that, madam. I'm just asking. So for example, we are told that there have been like 3 or 4 different places considered for accommodation. Will the board express a view about whether the Get Farm building was better or the GNTC building was better, or you are not? Does that come to the board level? This is purely the chief executive and his deputy.
It comes to the board level at different stages. So the conversation. So when I talk about the whole conversation about accommodation, will come to the board level. The discussions will happen. The advice would be discussed and advised given, and then the implementation of the way forward would be led by the special officer in the office. So that's what I'm trying to see. So then I wouldn't say we never discussed matters concerning accommodation. There were even times that I know board members actually went to see some of the places. So then at these discussions just
okay. Fair enough.
But then after discussion, then the implementation of whatever decision, or we all agree on the expected of the office.
Fair enough. Another issue that came up was the fact that the OSP had few staff who were on secondment. So his view was that they would not be really loyal to the OSP but to the organization from which they are being seconded. And the fact that they needed to be renewed suggests that they would not work with that security of tenure. I mean, what role does the board have in recruitment of staff? Because he says he has only, I think, 2 investigators and 3, lawyers or prosecutors.
I will always make reference to the Special Prosecutors Act 2017 at 959, which section 6 once again and look at section 1C. Says that the board has a responsibility to advise the Special Prosecutor on the recruitment and selection of the secretary and other senior staff of the office. So if you have such a responsibility, then obviously matters in relation to the hiring of senior people will come to the attention of the board and those deliberations on such matters.
So, can you explain to Ghanaians why he had less than 6 staff? Because apparently he didn't have more than 3 investigators and 2 prosecutors or something like this. Why didn't he have the requisite number of staff to work with? Do you know?
Bernard, I'm sure you've seen the letter written by both parties, and you've seen it in outlining the circumstances maybe under which some of these things might have occurred. So then you have to recruit senior staff, and the current place might be too small. What steps can be taken? And so discussions happened, some of the decisions were made, but also at the time that this recruitment has been ongoing for some time, it has not been completed, because sometimes the discussions when we just completed where would be even be accommodated. But then there were big taken to even just make certain arrangements for some people to senior people are must to start with the cost. But the process was not completed. But I will, as I said from the onset, deliberations can be matters into the attention of the board.
Fair enough. Just finally, was the board aware Mr. Amidu intended to resign, and could you have done anything to prevent it?
Okay, so then if you take a closer look at the letter of the Special Prosecutor, you realize that the board was not cautious. Some of the challenges that have been mentioned, as I said, we were aware of it, but then it came as a surprise to me as the chair and also the board as a whole. And in terms of whether we would have been able to prevent it from happening, I'm sure he is actually the reason for his resignation, and some of them are related to development that has not come to the attention of the board because as a result of COVID, we might not have left to be able to discuss matters and relations.
Okay.
Yes, so the recent happening, we might not have come to the attention of the board. So we were not anticipating.
You are not aware. Okay, fair enough. We'll leave it here. Thank you for talking to us. Linda Foriko is the board chair of the Office of Special Prosecutor. Now we still have Justice Remsai here. We've been joined by Johnny Debugre, who he's not a prophet, but I'm sure he could pass for one. Said a lot of things which have turned out to be true. We'll ask him what he saw that made him make those predictions. And he's one of the people we know who's been boss to Mr. Amidu in a previous employment. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, Johnny Debugre will join us as well. This is the point of view. We're trying to get to the bottom of the latest with this Office of the Special Prosecutor. Stay with us.
The perfect gift for our staff and clients this season?
All your different caliber of staff? Big question.
I don't want to start guessing what each person needs.
And have to worry where to get what for who when.
Some want electronics, furniture, clothes, others want groceries, crockery, cutlery.
Hey, how can you tell?
She's a magician. With the Malcolm gift vouchers, everyone can get what they want. Remember, you can get the same bargain prices from any Malcolm shop across the country. Now, everyone can get a perfect gift.
The winner of the World Luxury Hotel Award for Best Luxury Riverside Hotel is the Royal Senchi Hotel and Resort, Ghana.
Yo, what else that? What's running compared to me? See, when you say Nancy, a juma per wedding. When you say juma per wedding, so sorry, I say four more for the end. Papa, so you say, Shut up, your mama saw bar or the jumapa and a number. A jumapa no munu over be 1 million jobs. Oh, by their pension. That is a few piano or be 250,000 jobs. Yet, Juma, oh, yeah, and then, Oqua or Jania Pamuno. Hey, sir. Na se ono pese oye ono adwuma nso e ye obabon de se ya o se obese obi na adwuma on tuato efie mienu na afa so me ne wo ye pese ye bi adwuma ye friend private sector no obema e tuotua no eye mra ma ye nkora afa so bo we bese a ye betumi ya tetre adwuma no ansi hu e wo no so e kuma bi afa medium size aya na ntem adwuma no so ye ntua corporate tax efie mienu afa VAT kra ye so VAT amamfo ka VAT no so bet so 5%. So papa and look at the bonus. Your mama said, Oba, what you ma panumuno, Obaso police, Obaso military, Obaso ministry, and yet you cry. That the head of Mukran said, TVET, a free. After a national apprenticeship program, no so. Obaso Mason, Obaso hairdressing, and that monkey take it to be Obaso piano, and whom you know, by him the crama or cry. Usian so no amount, allowance can go to me. Who we answer what I can to a beer. Woduman waka de wum odi akosua akofi waduma nase umpe we na obede en kwa de papa o ma feri o be feri we nkwa de me mama djuma po ya
Juma Joma Hama ni NDC ama ejuma ni nkoso aba ama ye nyina.
Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight we're trying to bring you more insights into the resignation of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, which resignation took place on Monday. And we have on the line Johnny Debrugre, who's a private legal practitioner. We also have via Zoom Justice Shremsai, and we have on the line as well Linda Forikwafo. Mr. Debrugre, thank you so much for joining us. When Mr. Amidu's resignation statement got to the press, your name was on every journalist's lips because they said you should come for your stone. So I'm not too sure if a prophet is also one of your professors. I know you're a lawyer and a former politician. So how did you get it so right? What made you believe that it was going to end this way?
Oh, there were two. Good evening. Good evening, my good friends, and to all my good friends in CTFM, and good evening to your listeners.
Good evening.
And viewers. Now, there were two basic things. My personal knowledge of Mr. Martin Amidu, and secondly, the architecture that was put forth by the law establishing the office of public prosecutor. That informed me that Martin was not likely to succeed in that enterprise.
So that the way the setup was and what you knew of him, once he wasn't going to succeed, he would resign.
Yeah, I haven't got that one.
What I'm saying is that you are saying that because of the way the office was set up, you knew he wouldn't succeed. And yes, knowing him personally, knowing he wouldn't succeed means he would resign.
Yes. Because, I mean, you imagine, even listening to the board chairperson this. Are you with me?
I'm listening to you. Go ahead.
Yes, listening to the board chairperson this evening, even though I couldn't hear her very clearly. It has become obvious that that board was established as a buffer between those who will seek to interfere with the work of Martin and Martin. Because I have described it as a very strange thing to me that you establish the office of special prosecutor as a company with a board chairperson and members, and then you appoint somebody as a special prosecutor who, as far as I can separate the law, is the chief executive officer of the company with a deputy. How can the chief executive officer supersede the board? The law said clearly that the special prosecutor would be accountable to the board. How come that all these things were happening and the board has said nothing? The board was a buffer between Martin and those who were seeking to interfere with his work. That is my. So
when you say buffer, are you saying then that the board's role was to prevent interference or to enable it?
Maybe buffer is not too accurate. Maybe I should say it was a shield rather than a buffer. It was a shield.
A shield for Mr. Amidu or a shield for the interferers?
It was a mask.
A mask
between Amidu and the people who will seek to interfere with his work. Just like the mask between the coronavirus and the person who is likely to infect another person with the virus.
But then that means the board was there to protect him from interference.
No. The board was to protect those who sought to interfere with his work.
Really?
Yes, because it has been demonstrated. Because all these things have happened, the board has said nothing. How can you blame the special prosecutor, the chief executive of the company, for policy decisions like where the office of the company should be? That is a policy decision. It's not an operational decision. It is when the board has decided that the office of the company should be located at cantonment that the chief executive will now go and operationalize that decision. Now everything is being made as if it was Martin, the special prosecutor, who had the duty to look for an office, to do things, to draw money, and all that. It just demonstrates very clearly what I have been saying all the time, that there was no intention to set up the office of special prosecutor for the purposes of fighting corruption.
Wow.
It was an election promise, and so it was one of the low-hanging fruits. So they just reached for it and tried to confuse all of us. Fortunately, God is very, very awake. So these things have happened, and the exposure is too graphic.
So are you saying that the Martin you knew couldn't see this? Because you are saying it's very clear to you that the way it was set up was political. Are you saying the man you worked with couldn't have known that this was not going to go anywhere?
Well, I have seen something put out, I think yesterday or early this morning, that Martin, one of the reasons why Martin took this step to resign immediately was because of the demise of former President Rawlings. And Martin, it seems it has been put out that Martin sent a copy of the report to General Rawlings when he was alive.
Yeah.
And General Rawlings agreed to intervene between Martin, between Martin and the president.
Mm-hmm.
And even it was stated in that post that General Rawlings intimated to Martin that the president was unhappy about Martin giving a copy of the report to him, Rawlings. So from day one, I knew that General Rawlings was very much involved in convincing Martin to take up that position. And maybe out of his respect for the late Rawlings and his admiration for him and so on, which some of us don't seem to share, he may have agreed to handle the thing that way. But from day one, I said that Martin should have seen through that he was not going to make it, because the law itself was clear. It was clear in the law that you wouldn't be able to make it. Now, let me make this other point. The Attorney General, Martin, was to prosecute on the authority of the Attorney General. And you see that these events that have lately taken place, is it not strange that the Attorney General didn't come into the matter? That report that Martin sent to the president was a legal document. A legal document. The prime advisor of the government is the Attorney General. I thought that the Attorney General should rather have been advised and invited to discuss that report with the president, and not the Minister of Finance. Because the Minister of Finance was a target of that report.
No, but to the extent that Mr. Amidu has said this was not an investigative report, but what he considered an assessment, essentially like an audit, so almost like a preliminary job. So
yes, right. It was a legal document. It was a legal document. So the Attorney General was the best person to meet the president to discuss in the first instance. And I was expecting that the Attorney General would have advised the president that maybe ask the finance minister to say something about it. The Attorney General didn't feature at all.
Which is surprising to you.
Which means that they had shut off the Attorney General because, possibly because of the earlier statements she had made.
All right.
Their position she had taken. And that brings the thing down to this family and friends thing. That the president was definitely trying to protect his family member.
Okay, now, what do you, knowing what you know of Mr. Amidu, He writes a 4.5-page resignation. President's secretary has written a 9-page response. Should we expect something from Mr. Amidu in the coming days?
No, if I were you, I would just ignore that thing because they didn't respond. The president's secretary's letter did not deal with the issues raised by Amidu. It was all diversionary. This business about getting buildings and so on. That wasn't the business of Amidu. As I have said, it was the board that was to take that decision, and you can't blame Mr. Amidu for that.
All right.
They concentrated so much on that. But there were two basic important things in that Amidu's letter of resignation. One, that his work was being interfered with. Two, that between the time he issued that report to the president and the 12th of November when the Rollins died, he had come under threat. That wasn't tackled in the reply. He said his life was threatened, and the Rollins was his protector. And now that his protector has gone, he had to run away. They haven't said anything about that. Was he threatened or not?
All right.
So, I mean, if I were Martin, I wouldn't even respond to anything again. We should leave it at that and let Ghanaians decide whether his story is right
or not.
The story that comes from the powerful house is the right one.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. John Debugre. This is still the point of view. I'll take another quick break. When I come back, I'll go to Justice Sai, and if I have a board chair still there, I'll put a couple of questions to her as well. Stay with us.
In Ghana, the law enjoins all drivers and passengers in a moving vehicle to wear a seatbelt. No excuse is good enough for not wearing a seatbelt. Seatbelts that are fitted in vehicles are adjustable, so please adjust it to suit you. Let it rest as close as possible to the body. As a driver, before you drive off, ensure everyone else, especially children in the vehicle, have fastened their seatbelts. The airbag is not an alternative to a seatbelt because in the event of a crash, only the fastened seatbelt will stop a passenger from being thrown far forward. So buckle up. Stop road crashes now. Stay alive.
This road safety education is brought to you by the National Road Safety Authority.
Antiperspirant with the power of black carbon formula, 48-hour protection from sweat and bacteria for a deep, clean feeling that lasts. New Nivea Men Deep Antiperspirant. Nivea Men, it starts with you. Official sponsor of Real Madrid.
Hi, my name is Salamatu. Yes, these are both me. You see, before free SHS, my life could have taken two very different paths. The SHS path depended on how much money my parents had, what sacrifices they were willing to make, and whether they would send me or my little brother Issa to SHS. The other path is what would have become of me if there was no free SHS. But today, thanks to free SHS, my future is bright and promising.
Congratulations, you have a name. He's a boy.
Instead of depending on others, I will stand on my own feet and help my family. Free SHS is where my dreams for a better future and the dreams of thousands of young girls become a reality. Don't let NDC take it away from us. Vote for NPP and give all Ghanaian girls a chance for a better future.
Welcome back. We're still on the point of view. Justice Sai is a senior lecturer of law, GIMPA, and Linda Ferikwafu is still on the line as well from the OSP. Justice, I've seen some publications you've put out suggesting that there was probably no need for this office at all. Do you still stand by this? And also, can the office be made to be functional now that Mr. Amidu has left it? Justice, please check your sound. We can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Yes, so we need to go back to what the office was set up to do. You know, over the years, Ghanaians have raised certain concerns about how prosecution is done in this country. And the concern has been that governments or the attorney generals of the past government only prosecutes officers of the past government. So, for example, when President Kufuor came to office, you see that was when the attorney general, who happened to be the current president, started prosecuting Jerry Rawlings' ministers. And then when Mills came, then they started prosecuting the government officials of President Kufuor. So the mischief that the Office of the Special Prosecutor was aimed to cure was to create an office where, while in government, there will be someone who will be prosecuting the serving officers of government. And to be able to do that, you need an office which is independent of the government in power. That was the mischief that the office was supposed to cure. Now, when the law came out, we realized that the architecture was simply an appendage of the office of the president or the attorney general. And that was, you can see that for the communication from the president executive secretary, where, for example, the OSP's office was basically being run on a day-to-day basis from the chief of staff's office. And that also made the president believe that any letter given to him, he had a duty, to take steps based on the letter. So when you put all this together, you realize that the office was dysfunctional from the word go. Let's compare it with what we have in the United States, for instance. You have the attorney general who prosecutes all crimes, but then they have the office of the special prosecutor, which is supposed to be an ad hoc office. So, for example, when there's a serious scandal, then they appoint Mueller to do that investigation, because then the president's own attorney general, who is his lawyer, will not be fair, or there will be a conflict of interest if the president's lawyer, tries to do such investigations. So usually the practice is to make the office of the special, and that is special because it is always in special circumstances that office works. So it is supposed to be an ad hoc office, so that when there is a problem or a situation where there will be a conflict of interest between the president and the person who is being prosecuted, then the special prosecutor steps in. Mm-hmm. So the very idea of making the office a substantive standing office is a problem.
Okay.
It is a problem because then the office needs to be established formally, then the office needs support from the president, then the office has to rely on allocated funds, and the office has to run like any other ministry, then the office has to...
So you are talking of the bureaucratic problem.
That way, the link between the president and the special prosecutor becomes stronger.
Okay.
So really, if we had gone the ad hoc way, I believe clearly that this situation of even looking for a place for the special prosecutor will not arise. This situation of the special prosecutor even having to submit some report to the president before he publishes it will not arise.
All right, thank you.
Situation where the president would even try to solicit responses from persons who have not been, part of the response, the report.
Thank you very much, Justice.
So my belief is that if we really want to go forward, we need to relook at the whole structure of this office.
All right.
And rather make it.
Thank you very much, Justice. Let me take a final comment from Linda. Madam Linda, if you are still there, where does this leave the board? Mr. Ndebruge suggests that you were there to shield what do you call it? To shield the interferers. Do you want to respond to that? And what's your final comment?
Bernard, I'm very disappointed in Honorable Ndebruge and even Justice Shremsai. If anybody wants to have a good conversation on this subject matter, the person should be well educated as far as the law is concerned. If they have studied the law, they will not be making some of the unfortunate submissions that they have just made this evening. And I'm quite disappointed in them, should be told. That aside, okay, so then let me address this particular issue. So Justice Shremsai was talking about the functioning and all those things. It is well laid out in the law. It's obviously a new office, so some of the teething problems are expected. But what might have delayed is that the time we have spent in trying to resolve them. He's making reference to the U.S. and all that. Please, there's a new office set up with the intention and objective well laid out in a very important legislation. At the point he was invited, and he was actually part of the discussion that went on the setting up this office. So then I quite unfortunate. I want to see anybody who wants to engage in a conversation on this matter should take a critical look at the law before.
Just a final point. The previous point was that the board should have been more involved in the securing accommodation.
The board has been involved.
And we didn't hear anything from you throughout the period.
So then the board is not a civil society board. You see, I am a civil society actor. Bernard, you know my work. You know the things I can do and say. We are discussing the matters of a very important office of special prosecutor. We don't stand on top of the roof and start shouting and screaming and let the public know the challenges.
Right.
We discuss, we engage, and the steps were being taken to resolve the matter. Please.
Thank you.
We are talking about public sector directors who are on the board with a civil society person. We don't work like that, please.
Thank you.
But then going forward, the next step, if you look at the Office of the Special Prosecutor's Act, Section 17 actually deals with, talks about the functioning of the functions of the Deputy Special Prosecutor. In the interim, I think the person can be acting.
I appreciate the time. Thank you so much, Leno Forikwafu, for your time. She's the board chairman of the Office of Special Prosecutor at Justice Femsai, law lecturer at GIMPA. Earlier on, we had John Indebugre, who's also a lawyer. Thank you for watching. We'll be with you next time. Bye-bye.